looked at 3 categories of adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs. These categories were broken down into the following areas: childhood abuse, which includes emotional, physical, and sexual abuse; neglect, which includes physical and emotional neglect; and household challenges, which include substance abuse, mental illness, violent treatment of a parent, grandparent, or guardian, parental separation or divorce, and member of the household going to prison. The surveys were scored on a scale of 1 to 10 based on the number of ACEs a person had experienced. Almost 2/3 of the adults who participated in the study reported at least one ACE, and many reported multiple ACEs. A significant portion of respondents were Caucasian males. This data dispels the idea that trauma only occurs in urban or low-income area ACEs. The results of the study show that the more ACEs a person has, the greater their chances are of experiencing health issues and a poorer quality of life. There is a strong connection between people with 4 or more ACEs and serious illnesses such as cancer and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or COPD, depression and suicide, risky behaviors including illicit drug use and sexually transmitted diseases, and health issues such as heart disease, stroke, obesity, and diabetes. A person with 4 or more ACEs is 5.5 times more likely to miss up to 2 weeks of work over the course of a month due to mental health issues. In addition, these individuals are more than 7 times more likely to consider themselves an alcoholic. A person with 3 ACEs is over 6 times more likely to attempt suicide compared to someone without any ACEs, while someone with 4 ACEs is 12 times more likely to attempt suicide. Individuals without any ACEs have been shown to have a life expectancy 20 years longer than individuals with 6 or more ACEs. There are 2 additional studies that can help expand our understanding of the effects of adverse childhood experiences. The Philadelphia Urban ACE study added 5 additional urban indicators. They include racism, witnessing violence, growing up in an unsafe neighborhood, living in foster care, and experiencing bullying. The results of this study concluded that children living in higher-risk urban areas have an even greater chance of experiencing multiple adverse experiences. The Center for Youth Wellness in San Francisco published a report called A Hidden Crisis. This report supports earlier findings relating to the number of adverse childhood experiences and a person's quality of life. It also highlights the importance of early identification and intervention, stating that the effects of adverse childhood experiences can be reduced with targeted and enhanced care. The ACE studies have helped shed light on the prevalence of trauma, as well as its long-term effects. Handout 2, Effects of ACEs in Learning Environments, provides information on how adverse childhood experiences can affect young children in educational settings.
Young children's brains grow at an astonishing rate. During the first few years of life, over 1 million neural connections are made every second. By the age of 5, the brain is 90% the size of an adult's brain. When a child interacts with adults, their peers, and their environment, these connections are formed. When children continue to experience positive interactions, these neural connections survive. On the other hand, toxic stress and trauma can cause these neurons to wither and die prematurely in certain key parts of the brain. Consequently, the more trauma a child experiences, the fewer neural connections are made. This is critical because a child's future health, learning, and behaviors are determined through these connections. Professor, please tell us more about the brain.
The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres or sections that function very differently. The left side of the brain is orderly, logical, and literal. It is also the side of the brain that processes language. The right side of the brain is nonverbal. It focuses on sending and receiving messages such as facial expressions, hand movements, body language, and eye contact. The right side of the brain is known for emotions, personal memories, and creating images. The left and right regions are opposites. They balance each other out. During their first 3 years of life, young children are right brain dominant. This is because they have not yet mastered the ability to think logically and use words to adequately express their feelings. The goal is for children to use both sides of their brain so that they learn to value logic and emotions. This will lead to being able to understand oneself and the larger community. The brain forms from the bottom up. The brain stem develops first and takes care of bodily functions that happen without conscious awareness, breathing, for example. The brain stem is our first line of defense that helps us deal with trauma or emergencies when we don't have time to think about them. The brain stem is directly connected to the retina. When we see something, even before we are consciously aware of it, the retina transmits to the brain stem and our fight, flight, or freeze response is activated. We will further discuss this system later in the cycle. The limbic system is the second portion of the brain that forms and holds the amygdala, which is the brain's fear center. When the amygdala is repeatedly triggered by chronic or toxic stress, it becomes overactive, which causes exaggerated responses to certain stimuli, such as sounds, touches, or sights, that remind children of previous traumatic experiences. The limbic system also plays a role in forming new memories. When the amygdala gets activated, it sends a signal to the hippocampus that disrupts the brain's ability to create both short-term and long-term memories. The amygdala is one of the most important structures in the limbic system because it helps identify and react to threats in the environment. The limbic system also governs emotions, motivation, and behavior. It's easy to see why trauma impacts children's emotional responses, behavior, motivation to engage, and memory. The upper region, or prefrontal cortex, is one of the last parts of the brain to develop. In fact, it is believed that this region is not fully developed until most individuals are in their mid to late 20s. The prefrontal cortex is where decision-making, problem-solving, working memory, mental flexibility, and planning take place. This part of the brain helps children regulate their emotions, process information, and think about others. For children experiencing toxic stress, the activities of the prefrontal cortex are inhibited when the amygdala sends signals of alert. The idea is to decrease brain functioning so that reasoning doesn't override survival. This affects children in different ways.
A few of the observation notes might read like this. December 10th, 9:30 a.m., Center Time. When I asked Gabe to go to the Literacy Center, he told me that he didn't want to draw, but wanted to play with the trucks. I told him he could play with the trucks after he's finished his activity. He stomped his foot and said, "No, they'll be gone." He ran to the vehicles and took a truck. He refused to put it back when I asked. December 11th, 9:30 a.m., Center Time. Gabe grabbed a truck from Madison while they were playing near each other on the carpet. Madison didn't let go, and the two wrestled over the toy. Madison took the toy back, and Gabe hit her on the arm. Madison began to cry. Gabe took the truck and moved to another area of the carpet. December 12th, 9:30 a.m., Center Time. During Centers today, Gabe did not join a table activity. He went to the transportation bin and searched through it. He then took all of the trucks and put them in the corner. He sat in front of them with his back angled to the room. The teacher's first step is to think through what has been observed. It would appear that Gabe doesn't want to share, but there might be something more going on here. If Gabe had experienced toxic stress in his home environment, his reactions to sharing could be a result of the stress, causing him to see common situations as threatening. He might be reacting out of a desire to protect himself and what he wants. The program director is a good resource to assist this teacher with thinking through what might be happening with Gabe. When we experience children who exhibit undesirable behaviors, it helps to think about why the child might be reacting in such a way. Based on her notes, the teacher is able to see that the desire to control the trucks at the transportation center is a trigger for Gabe's behavior. Together with the director, she formulates a plan to help Gabe feel some control while still being equitable to the other children. The plan is that each morning, Gabe can go pick out his truck for the day upon arrival. This will be the truck that he plays with that day at agreed upon times. Once she has discussed the plan with Gabe and he has agreed to it, the anecdotal observation cycle will begin again. Not every observation will lead to clear conclusions, especially when caring for children who may be experiencing trauma. The important part is to gather as much information as possible so you can reflect on what you are doing to positively support the child through the challenge. The simple act of allowing Gabe a choice can help him build resiliency.